So let's bring in Thembisa Fakude now. He's a senior research fellow at the Africa-Asia Dialogue. He joins us for analysis. Thembisa, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. So you've heard from our correspondent, and I actually want to continue on just that last point that he made, because we are hearing that these three Israeli hostages who were killed by the IDF had been holding a white flag. To what extent will this add more political and international pressure, for Israel in its ongoing bombardment of Gaza?
Well, it shows you how far Benjamin Netanyahu will go in terms of saving his own skin, because he knows that when the dust settles, he's likely to face jail term, or if not ousted from power. So whatever it takes for him, including killing his own people, this was clearly an irresponsible act. There's no justifications for such an aggression, knowing that you have your own citizens held by Hamas to continue on an all-scale, all-out war to kill as many people as you can whilst pretending to be targeting Hamas. So this, to me, I don't think there's any excuse, and I doubt if the Israelis, particularly the members of families of those that were killed, are going to believe Benjamin Netanyahu henceforth. But I think what we might see from tonight onwards, we're likely to see sustained protest calling for ceasefire, and at the same time calling for the return of those hostages that are currently held by Hamas.
And then also something that is happening, that is developing, is that, much needed humanitarian aid will now, for the first time since the war began on the 7th of October, be allowed into Gaza through an Israeli crossing for the first time. How will this aid in terms of the much needed humanitarian aid that is needed in that area?
Well, it's going to be welcomed by the Palestinians, but the Palestinians, as we stand, this is just small little assistance, given the level of destruction that we've seen and the number of people that already have been killed. So the Palestinians really, at the moment, I'm not even sure whether they realize that there is another crossing that has been opened on the Israeli side. For them is the continual condemnation and insistence on the international community to, one, declare this as war, crimes against humanity and a genocide, and importantly to hold Benjamin Netanyahu and his government into account. So this is what's going to be happening henceforth. And so we'll have to wait and see how the Palestinians will react to that opening. But I doubt that many of them are even aware that there is that opening, because the communications lines and internet is off in Gaza, and many people really do not necessarily know exactly what's happening in Gaza, whether aid is coming in or not. So for them is neither here nor there. I think it's just to appease the international community and those of us who are watching that Israel is now beginning to yield to pressure from the international community to allow the trickling in of aid into Gaza.
I just want to piggyback on some of the words that you're using in terms of you saying those of us who are watching. Of course, we are watching also because of some very brave men and women who are journalists in Gaza who are risking their lives on a daily basis. The latest victim, the latest journalist to be killed is from Al Jazeera, and he was killed near a school, which was, hosting young children and women, in a shelter. So that is of concern. Of course, the New York-based Committee to Protect Journalists says more than 60 journalists have died in Gaza, and some of them being Palestinians, some being Israelis, and 3 Lebanese. Just your take on this.
Well, what is more shocking, of course, is the silence of other media organizations and platforms that seek or claim to be representing journalists around the world. And very few of them have actually condemned or continue to condemn Israel for killing a journalist. This is not the first Al Jazeera journalist that was killed. We still are waiting for Israel to respond on the killing and targeting of Shireen Abu Akleh, who was killed by the Israeli bullet and Israeli soldiers, and Israel has accepted that it was responsible for killing of Shireen Abu Akleh. So it's going to be business as usual after the burial that took place last night. Things are going to continue as usual. Israel is going to continue without being condemned. So we are facing actually a very difficult time in terms of journalism. You are now in a position where all the things that you've been taught in journalism school about objectivity, holding truth to power, standing firm for justice and what's correct and etc. Everything is thrown out the window because of this conflict. You have some of the most respected news platforms, as I've said, in journalism platforms or rights groups who are at the moment very quiet when it comes to condemnation of Israel's behavior in this war, particularly the targeting and killing of journalists. So you're going to have a very polarized journalist or journalism fraternity when the dust settles in this war. And it's unfortunate, of course, that we are now going to be having two camps, the one which is on the side of the Palestinians, the oppressed and the poor, and the other one which is on the side of the privileged, those that hold places of power. And there's going to be a very, very clear cleavage and division henceforth. And it's a very sad day, of course, in journalism, that the core principles of objectivity and trying to uphold the principle of journalism, henceforth, unfortunately, very, very few, particularly those based in the Middle East, will be seeking to adhere to those very basic principles that all of us have appreciated over the years.
I want us to talk about, the U.S. and Israel relationship. I mean, while we are seeing, U.S. continuing to veto important resolutions in the UN, resolutions backed by many nations, but the U.S. and the U.K. in some instances, on the one hand, Biden saying that, Israel should practice some form of constraint, particularly when it affects civilians. What do you read into the relations now with between Biden, particularly, and Netanyahu, especially as we also understanding that U.S. public support for Israel is also dropping?
Well, I don't think this is going to impact in that relationship. Biden has made his position very clear that Israel had its absolute support in terms of going against Hamas. Which, of course, was disturbing to many of us because we questioned at the time who was Hamas in this conflict. And we now realize that actually that blanket support that Biden gave to Benjamin Netanyahu was to go and kill as many Palestinians as possible. The number of Hamas fighters that have been killed so far is a handful. Many of the people that have been killed are innocent women and children. And Biden is the same person who went on to question the number of Palestinians that have been killed, claiming that there were some inaccuracies in terms of the numbers that were brought forward in terms of the Palestinians that have been killed. It was also Biden who did not acknowledge that the Israeli Defense Force was actually responsible of killing a number of Israelis on 7th October when they came in to try and push back Hamas. So they mistakenly killed a number of Israelis. So the killing that we heard about yesterday was not the first time. Israel has done this before. It has killed its own people. So Biden is part and parcel of this problem. And because he's facing challenging and very competitive elections next year, he's trying very hard to garner support, particularly from the Jewish lobby within the United States. And he hopes that by standing the way or taking the position that he's taken on Israel, he is going to be returned into power. But the polls suggest that Donald Trump might just gain power and might just return into the White House. So it's quite a difficult situation for Biden. But his relationship with Benjamin Netanyahu, both men, by the way, are facing the toughest political challenges in their careers, will do whatever it takes for them, one, to win elections in the United States, but for Benjamin Netanyahu to stay out of jail and to stay in power. But I think from tonight onwards, this is the beginning of the end for Benjamin Netanyahu.
Right, Thembisa, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Really do appreciate it. Thembisa Fakude, Senior Research Fellow at the Africa-Asia Dialogue, just giving us analysis there.